Hey guys, Craig Peterson back again. Welcome to everybody. If you haven't heard me before, I am on the radio every Saturday from 1 till 3 p.m. here on WGAN. And we talk a lot about technology, and my business is entirely based on technology, on networks and security, and securing regulated businesses, including financial businesses, medical businesses, and DFARS, ITAR, military type security as well, if you have to go all of the way, and public companies. So that's what I do. So what do I talk a lot about? Security. Because I have been in the boat before where I didn't know what was happening. I got hacked, different type of technique, but basically I got hacked years ago. And I almost lost the business that I had been building because of this hack. And so I was all of a sudden the de facto security person in the business as the owner of the business, right? And the owner, you have to wear a lot of hats. And then I started helping other business owners with it, and then started helping their people, the office managers. That's a very common title of the people that I work with, who are the de facto IT and security people. So I've been working with them over the years, and I have found that almost to a person, they need some help because it's so complicated, and so many people out there are lying to them, just like we talked about a couple of segments ago with VPNs, how these VPN companies are lying, which is really, really bad if you ask me. So I try and help straighten them out and straighten it out here on the show. We have a lot of home users, a lot of home listeners, a lot of retirees here who are listeners on the radio. And you guys are some of the biggest targets, believe it or not, because the huge multi-billion-dollar corporations, they can afford security. If you have less than 1,000 employees, you can't. And the basic reason you can't is because you can't afford the security people that you need. You might be able to afford some of the equipment that you need, or you probably can, but you can't afford to have the people that you need to design it, to set it up, and to run it. It's a full-time job for a staff of people. And so that's where we come in for those types of companies that really want the security, but can't afford it, can't do it themselves, and really need help. So that's my business side of things. And, if you have any questions at all, if we can help, because this is complicated, let me know. Just email me at craigpeterson.com. That'll come to me. And I answer pretty much every question that comes our way. Sometimes I answer them here on the radio, particularly if it's a common question a lot of people have. Sometimes I will just go ahead and email you back. And I also have a text number that you can send me questions to. And my texting number is just 855-385-5553. You can text me anytime. If it's the middle of the night, I'm not going to answer, or I'm in a meeting, right? Not answer right away anyways. 855-385-5553. Two big things right now. And we'll get to them because this is our last segment of the day. So I have to get to them right now, but I want to get to these. One, again, is from Ars Technica. Another one is from Dark Reading. So we got a couple articles from each of these sites this week. This one is about Facebook, and this has been kind of everywhere online. If you go ahead and do some searches, you'll see this. But Facebook has facial recognition software. And if you go into your security controls on Facebook, you'll see right there that Facebook has a little checkbox that lets you turn off facial recognition. And the idea is with Facebook, hey, listen, we want to let you know when you're in a photo from a friend or a relative, right? And personally, I'd like to know if I'm in a photo from a friend or a relative, right? I think that'd be a great thing. So Facebook will let you know. But this facial recognition technology is far from perfect, and it's being used by the Chinese socialist government to track people and penalize them if they don't do what the government tells them to do. And it's being used in London, the most surveilled city in the world. It's being used there to track people. And it's being used, as I mentioned, by Facebook. So, another landmark lawsuit underway here. A federal court declined to hear another appeal to stop a $35 billion class action lawsuit against Facebook. That's real money. Well, it's real money to you and I. Not so much for Facebook, right? But in San Francisco last week, the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, which means it's almost always going to be overturned. It is the most overturned district circuit court in the country. But I think this particular ruling might stand. But the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit denied Facebook's petition for an en banc hearing in the case. So usually appeals cases are heard by 3 judges that are picked within the district court. And so they were looking to try and get a larger group of judges, maybe all of them, to hear it. So in the Ninth Circuit, there's 11 of the 29 judges that would sit for the en banc cases, and the court said no. The 3-judge panel was enough. So this class action suit that can now move forward includes these 3 different Illinois residents who filed suit against Facebook back in 2015. That's how long these things take, okay? And the suits that were rolled together into one class action complaint argue that Facebook's collection of users' faces for tagging violates the Illinois Biometric Information Privacy Act. And that's a law that requires businesses to gather consent from residents of Illinois before the biometric data is used or even collected, okay? So the Facebook fine in Illinois would be $5,000 for each knowing violation. There's about 7 million Facebook users in Illinois, hence the $35 billion that they're going for. Very, very big one. Massachusetts branch of the ACLU this week also released results of a test it ran on Amazon's recognition software, in which it mistakenly matched many New England professional athletes to mugshots from a database. So fascinating, isn't it? Absolutely fascinating. These facial recognition systems not only don't do well with Caucasian faces, but they are horrible with Chinese, many of the Asian faces. They can't tell them apart. They're very bad with African faces. And there's just lawsuit potential all over the place for people that are arrested or detained or charged based on facial recognition, particularly if they are, air quote here, minorities, right? So fascinating stuff there. Facebook's in more trouble. Now, this is from a company called Veracode. You might have heard of them. I've talked about them before on the code. They've got this annual State of Software Security report. And what they found, I thought, was very, very interesting. There's something in the software business called regression testing. Now, if you've known me for a while, you know I was involved very heavily in what's called kernel software. I helped to develop Windows in the kernel, various versions of Unix in the kernel, various network protocols, again, in the kernel. And I've done it for some of the biggest names in the world. Okay, absolutely. So we would always do regression tests. In other words, we fixed a bug. Well, before we fix, and release that fix for the bug, we have to test it. And then we put that test into a series of what are called regression tests. So let's say a year or 2 years from now, somebody else has made some changes, and it might have not touched our code. It might have touched the code that I fixed, right? But it's been a few years. So what happens is the good companies will do a regression test, and they'll make sure that that bug I fixed 2 years ago did not reappear. Well, it turns out that businesses aren't doing regression tests anymore. At least many of them aren't, because according to this, many enterprise organizations are at increased breach risk because of aging, unaddressed application security flaws. And this isn't just applications like apps that might be on your phone. These are applications that might be web apps. They might be applications that are used on anything from a green screen through a Mac or a Windows computer. They did security tests on more than 85,000 applications and found that on average, companies fix just 56% of all software security issues they discover between the initial and final scans. Most of the flaws that are fixed tend to be newly discovered ones, while older, previously discovered issues are neglected and allowed to accumulate dangerously. So Vericode's calling this security debt. It's increasing breach risks at many organizations. And when you get right down to it, those older flaws are usually the easiest for the bad guys to breach, because it's well known how to breach using those flaw vectors. Very interesting. So bottom line, pull up your socks, companies out there that are developing any sort of software, and don't think that just because you're using a cloud vendor for part of it, or you're using various APIs to go to various cloud vendors to put your overall business operations together, don't think that makes you safe, because it doesn't. And what we're finding now is more and more, that's actually a more dangerous way to do it than writing the code yourself. And then there's all the open source code and the problems people have had with that. So anyhow, hopefully you guys, attended my security summer this year. We went through a lot of great security stuff. It was absolutely free. My master class this week on VPNs, hopefully you attended that. It was absolutely free. Had a lot of great questions that we answered. I also want to remind you, coming up this week, the master class is about mobile devices. Coming up probably Thursday afternoon. Sign up now, craigpeterson.com/masterclass. Okay? craigpeterson.com. You'll see it on my homepage as well. Have a great week. You've been listening to me on WGAN and online as well. Frog in my throat just in time.